So what do we do if we have one of these, but we need something more precise? This is just a cheap kitchen scale. Rather than spending $15 or $25 to buy a more accurate one, we're going to make one out of things we have lying around the house. The purpose of this, we'll use it in future projects to measure out fertilizers and nutrient solutions for our hydroponic system. Let's get started. All right, let's take a look at the problem we have. We have a series of very accurate weight measurements we can use, but this scale is not accurate enough for this. So take, for example, a nickel, a US nickel, which weighs 5 grams. If we put it on the scale, yeah, it measures in at 5 grams. But then let's take something a little smaller, like a penny. A US penny should weigh 2.5 grams. And we have 2 grams. So is it 2.1? Is it 2.9? We can't really be sure. And let's take a US dime. This should weigh 2.2 grams. And this one weighs 2. You saw it jump to 3. See, now it's at 3, now it's at 2. It doesn't really know what it weighs. And by logic, a penny is bigger than a dime. So why do they weigh the same amount? They don't. And let's take a quarter. What if we want something a little bigger but still more precise? This weighs 6 grams, but a quarter actually weighs 5.67 grams. So we need to get very precise with this. We could stack these and try to come up with an accurate representation, but let's just build something that's going to work a little bit better. Let's take a look at what we'll need for this project. I have an index card here. What we need is straight lines and 90-degree corners. So I'm just using a piece of cardstock for that. Sharpie, pencil, some kind of a super glue, twine, just whatever I had lying around. Any kind would work for this. We have our weights, some kind of a sharp knife, 2 plastic cups. These are going to be our holding trays for what we're weighing. A weight, and that's strictly to hold the pole down so I can hang it off of a desk, or in my case I'll hang it off of my computer right here. And this will be our measuring system. This will be a coat hanger. Any kind of coat hanger will be fine. This is just scrap one that I had lying around. So let's get started. So the first thing we need is a reference point so we can make sure if it's actually aligned and weighing properly. So let's just do our best here. My pencil is not working. Let me grab a different one. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this reference line right here in conjunction with the end point right here. Let's see if we can make a perpendicular line on this. So let's see if we can match it up right about with the middle of that. We'll get close. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we can adjust and correct this later. Okay, so that looks pretty close to me. See how accurate this is. Okay, so there's our reference line. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera. We have a reference line drawn. And now what we're going to do is we are going to create a reference point with this. So we'll take a piece of string here. We'll cut this off. And we will improvise and just tie this right around here. And what this is going to be is this will be like a plumb bob. If any of you have ever used a plumb bob, it is essentially uses gravity to find a perpendicular point. So we will tie a knot on this right here so we can get this to hang down in front of this reference line to see if those two things are parallel. All right, there we go. And now we need some kind of a weighting mechanism on the end of this. I'm gonna go grab some fishing weights. I'll be right back. So in our materials, we also need some kind of a weight. It doesn't have to be a fishing weight. This is just convenient for me because I have them lying around. So what we'll do is we'll take this and thread this through here and tie this up. Like I said, the purpose of this is strictly to utilize gravity to check our reference. It'll hang directly down in the center, parallel to our reference point, provided the two things at either end are equal weights. If not, it'll skew to the side. All right, so let's check to see how close our reference point was. Okay, so here's our hanging point right here. We'll just place that right on there. And let's take a look at this and see how close we got with our line. You probably can't see the line on the camera, but I can tell that the string is hanging right in the middle of that reference line. So we did a pretty good job measuring that. So let's go ahead and make that permanent and fill that in. And it looks like our string is actually just hanging right to the left of that line, but it is definitely parallel. So we'll just have to keep that in mind and do an initial weigh every time before we use it, just so we can reference where our line is. But that looks pretty parallel to me. If we were off by just a little bit, what would happen is we'd see that skew out a little bit. We could use a different color string as well, and now it crosses that line right there. So that's going to give us a pretty good accurate weight, and we'll test it out when we're done. Now what we need are some kind of balances for each end of the scale. So I'm going to use plastic cups, and we're going to be very careful while we're cutting these, because this could get bad. Maintain this line right here. It's not going to be perfect, but it should get us pretty close, and we can adjust the scale when we're done if we made any mistakes and the weights are off by a little bit. The second one got a little sloppy, but that should do. So this is what we'll put whatever we're weighing in. That should do it. Alright, so now let's set these up. So what we want to do, get some string out. And we essentially want 3 equal pieces. That should be plenty long, right? Give ourselves a little bit of playroom. Should be good. I like doing half hitches, but any knot would work fine. Just one side. Now what we can do is we can join these all together. And we'll try to balance them. See if we can adjust the camera a little bit. We'll try to adjust them as close to possible so this is hanging level. Just holding them right here. Trying to get this to look relatively perpendicular to the ground. That should be fine. And then we'll take where we balance them and we'll just put a knot in that right there. Tie those all together. There we go. There's one basket. Let's do the other one. All right, there we go. Let's try it out. Okay, let's see how well these balance initially. We can make any micro adjustments. So I have these handy little hooks right here on the edge of my hanger. So I'm just gonna wedge these knots down into these little holes, into these notches. Should give it some good grip there. Adjust it a little bit to make it hang a little flatter. There we go, that looks pretty good. Let's do the other side. And now what we're going to do is we're going to secure everything together. So we'll grab our super glue and we'll just tidy up all these joints. Put a dab of glue on each of the knots in each place where it connects to the scale. That way nothing gets loose on us. Alright, so everything is dried up. There's the finished product. Let's check the balances. It looks a little off to me. So we'll see how accurate we can get in here for you guys with the camera. Let's adjust that. Let's get it to stop swinging. Fix the camera while that's happening. So if we're looking directly at it, we are off to the right just a hair, which means our right side is a little bit heavier. Just barely. Maybe by a few fractions of a gram is all. So we'll shave off a little more plastic from that side. Alright, let's lighten this side up just a little bit. Just barely off. Let's try that out. That looks pretty dead on. I can live with that. We have it readjusted so the center is now in the center of the string. Let's move that just a little bit. I'm still not happy with that. I'm gonna keep playing with this. So now that we're done with this, we can get some pretty accurate measurement comparisons. So let's check it. So let's see if 5 grams equals 5 grams. These are 2 nickels. And one thing that's really important when you're using a scale like this is you want to keep your weights as close and perpendicular to the attachment point. If you have one of them on the inside and one of them on the outside, well then your weights are gonna be skewed. So it looks like, according to our scale, 5 grams does equal 5 grams. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's hanging a little crooked. But those do indeed match up. So now what we could do is we could do something different. We could say, does 5 grams, so you can see how far off that is with just 5 grams, does that equal 2 pennies? Because 2 pennies are 2.5 grams each. Put that in there. And that looks pretty much right on the line to me. What we could do again is we could say something like, well, how many coins does it take to make 1 ounce? This is a 1 ounce silver coin. So we can put our 1 ounce in here, because we know that's a concrete measurement. And then 1 ounce should be pretty close to this. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 grams. 5 nickels. Let's put those in here and see how close we get with that. Make sure these are both centered in the cups. And we can see that 1 ounce is clearly heavier than 25 grams, because an ounce should be 28.3 grams, I believe. So if we put a penny in, which is 2.5 grams, this should get us to 27.25 grams. And we're off by just a hair, so we're pretty close. We don't have anything smaller than a penny, though, to finish that measurement. So what can we do? Oh, well, what we could do is we could do something like this. We could say, I want to measure 2.5 grams right here on this side with 1 penny. We'll wait for that to balance out. You can see clearly the line is far to the right. And then what we can do is we could do something like this. We could say, if we want to get very fine and precise, we could grab some of this stuff, grab some rice. It's a little meticulous and tedious, but what we could do is we could pour some rice in there. And we can see how many grains of rice is equal to 1 penny, or 2.5 grams. Let's wait for that to settle. It should be pretty close. I didn't pre-weigh these, so I'm just guessing here. Maybe just a couple more grains of rice. It doesn't take much to get it to balance. Maybe just a hair more. 3 or 4 more grains. There we go. That looks pretty close. And then what we could do is we could say we know these two things are balanced. We know this much rice is equal to 2.5 grams. That's a fixed weight. And what we could do is we could literally get quite tedious and take all that rice that we weighed and count it out. I know that's pretty annoying, but if we want to get very fine measurements and weight, this is what we could do. So we could go 1, 2, 3. So it's about 128 grains of rice equal to 2.5 grams. Which means we'd be at about 63 grams would be 63 grains of rice. About half would be about 1.25 grams. And then if we wanted less than that, we could even do half of that again. So we could do we could do like 30 some odd grains of rice would be equal to 0.75 grams. So we can start to get a really accurate picture of what the scale is capable of. If you don't want to count out grains of rice every time, I don't blame you. What you could do is maybe you could take little pieces of tinfoil and roll them up into balls and weigh them against your grains of rice initially. That way you have a set of very light weights with aluminum foil balls. There's all kinds of things you could do to utilize the scale and do very small measurements. Another thing that we could do is to improve this design is instead of using such a thick string here, we could use a very thin piece of string, like maybe a kite string, and that would help with getting us to these very fine measurements as well. For our purposes, this is good enough. What we're going to be using this for is for measuring out small amounts of powdered fertilizer, roughly 1 to 2 grams at a time, and that way we can get our calcium nitrate mixtures and get these little round pebbles in here and weigh those out accurately, close to 1 gram. We also have another one. This is a 14-8-38 fertilizer for tomatoes and vegetables. And this one is also a very fine powder. So we'll be utilizing this scale to measure out 1 and 2 gram increments to mix up our nutrient solution for our plants. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe.